School for Whatnots, Chapter 56, Josie and the Maze, or Labyrinth. You're Lucinda's friend? Josie whispered. The one she's been mad at for like a whole year? The rich kid in Lucinda's old school, Ivy added. I guess that's one way to describe me, Ashley said with a shrug. Her neon pink dress glowed against her dark skin, which was so similar to Lucinda and Ivy's, and she and Lucinda both wore the same kind of brightly colored woven bracelets, which looked strangely childish on both of their wrists. Oh, friendship bracelets, Josie thought. Maybe old ones that they're wearing again? You and Lucinda made up, Josie guessed. You're friends again. Because she finally called me, Ashley said with a soft, mocking punch to Lucinda's arm. I say goodbye to my BFF on the last day of fifth grade, and then she ghosts me for an entire year. What was I supposed to think? Nobody told you that your classmates were whatnots? Josie gasped. Or that they were pretending to be whatnots and Lucinda wasn't really allowed to call you? Ashley clenched her teeth and shook her head emphatically. No, she hadn't known. There are various options parents are given, Lola murmured. Some choose to tell their children nothing. Like how it worked with Max's mom, Josie said. Except Max's mom had real nuts, and I don't understand, Max complained. What do the two of you have to do with whatnots? Can someone explain? In Lucinda and Ashley's elementary school, Ivy began, Ashley was Max, the rich kid whose parents were paying to have her surrounded by perfect little whatnots. And Lucinda was like Josie, the rich kid's best friend who had to pretend all the time. And then fifth grade ended, and they never saw or spoke to each other again. And both of them were mad. Both of them thought it was the other girl's fault. Josie roared back her head and yelled at the ceiling, I hate the Whatnot Corporation! Off in the distance, there was a sound like chains clanking or maybe gears turning. Lola's face turned paler than ever. Maybe you shouldn't have said that, she moaned. And maybe we should keep moving while we talk? Josie hadn't even noticed that the walls of the maze had reappeared around them. The 6 kids together, or 5 kids, and however you wanted to count Lola, began tentatively walking forward. Right turn, left turn, right. But Josie left me a note telling me she was real, Max said, and then that kind of forced my parents to tell me about whatnots, even if some of what they told me was wrong. Lucinda, why didn't you leave Ashley a note? Or just tell her outright? Josie winced. When all this was over, she really did hope she and Max could be in the same school, because someone would need to help him figure out what he should and shouldn't say out loud. Not that she was all that good at remembering to keep her mouth shut either. Lucinda's expression stayed big sister patient. Josie only had to worry about what might happen to you and her, Lucinda told Max. I didn't just have to think about how upset my parents would be if I ruined my own education. I had to worry about ruining everything for Ivy, too. Josie saw Ivy clutch her sister's hand. Lucinda kept talking. And maybe even eventually for our little brother, Casper. Josie tried to imagine what she would have done if she'd had to choose between what was best for her and Max, and what was best for some make-believe little siblings. It was too hard. She couldn't even imagine having to babysit all the time, like, Where is Casper? Josie gasped. I got a neighbor to watch him, Lucinda said, but I said Ivy and I would be back before my mother got home, and Josie had no clue how much time had passed since Ivy and she had arrived at school. But surely Ivy and Lucinda's mom was home by now. Surely she was frantically trying to figure out where Ivy and Lucinda had gone. Josie's dad would be frantic by now, too. So maybe they'll rescue us? Josie thought hopefully. She imagined her father going into some crowded police station to report a missing person. She imagined him being told to wait in line. She imagined him describing her to some bored cop typing into a computer, and then the cop filing a report, and then nothing else happening. Because Dad wasn't rich and powerful like Max's parents. Because the whole city wouldn't drop everything to search for her like they would for Max. And Max's family's disappearance wouldn't catch anyone's attention right now because everybody else would think Max and his family had gone away on vacation like they were originally supposed to today. It would be weeks before they were reported missing. I really do hate the Whatnot Corporation, Josie thought, but she didn't scream it out loud this time. There's another difference, Lola said. She looked a little startled that the words had come out. Between Lucinda and Josie. Maybe I'm allowed to say it now. I'll try. The first night Josie was at school, Josie climbed out of her charging station, or her room, and the security guards had to decide what to do. The question went all the way to the top of the Whatnot Corporation, to Frances Miranda Gonzaga, and Frances Miranda Gonzaga texted back about Josie. Maybe she's the one. Lucinda, I don't have access to your records. I wasn't your caregiver. I'm not even allowed to see Ivy's records, but maybe there's something Josie was being prepared for. Maybe everything for her was just one giant test? Josie did not like the way the others were staring at her now. Even Max looked jealous. Maybe that's why Josie was allowed to act like the rich kid in class, Lucinda muttered to Ivy, just as much as Max. Ashley snorted. And Lucinda, you and I acted alike at school too, she protested. In fact, I texted our fifth grade teacher from my helicopter when I was coming here because I wanted to check out your story. And she said she always assumed you were the rich kid and I was one of the whatnots because supposedly my parents requested that she wouldn't know for sure either so I wouldn't get used to favoritism. She made mocking air quotes with her fingers as she spoke the last word. You have your own helicopter? Max asked. Some kids get that in middle school? Ashley ignored him. Listen, the Whatnot Corporation has been lying to us all along, and to our parents too, I guess, she told the others. Why should we believe anything they tell us? Why should we believe anything an android says? Because Lola's our friend, Josie said, and she at least tries to help, Max said. She tries to tell the truth. Ashley flashed him a scornful look. Trying to tell the truth isn't the same as actually telling the truth, she said, turning another corner in the maze. Josie saw Max slow down and fall behind the others. She slowed down too and fell into step beside him. I don't think I'm ready for middle school, he mumbled. From what I hear, nobody is, Josie said. I think it's one of those things you aren't ready for until you're actually doing it. She looked around at the lights flashing in the server cabinets around them. Maybe that's how it is here in the maze, too, and with wherever the maze is taking us. Max grinned at her, and it was almost a normal Max grin. Josie, if anyone in our class was extra special, if anyone was the one, then of course it would have been you, he said. Josie slugged him the same playful way she'd seen between Ashley and Lucinda. Max, you're just saying that because you're my best friend, and I'd say the same thing about you. That's all I meant when I said it didn't matter if you were rich or poor, Max went on. I still think that. Josie sighed. Max, you really don't know what you're talking about, she said, but Ivy and me will tell you if we ever get out of here. Ahead of them, Lucinda had whirled around accusingly toward Lola. Why did you guide us into this part of the maze? She asked. There aren't any choices here. We don't get to make any of our own decisions. Josie realized Lucinda was right. At every corner they turned lately, there'd been only one direction open ahead of them. That it'd been that way ever since they faced off against the bullies. This part of the maze isn't a maze at all, Ivy said. It's more like a labyrinth. A labyrinth, Josie remembered, only had one route through. That was why some people used labyrinths to think, to ponder, to meditate, or pray, because they didn't want to be distracted choosing which way to go, or backtracking when they made a wrong choice and hit a dead end. But it wasn't good to have only one route open ahead of you when you were afraid of where it led. Then we'll show the Whatnot Corporation, Ashley said, turning around. We'll just go back the way we came. Not possible, Lola said through clenched teeth. Her words seemed to tip off a demonstration. Josie saw the walls immediately behind her rearranging themselves. Or at least not helpful. Everything's connected now in a circular path. It doesn't matter which direction you try to go, you'll end up in the same place regardless. And where's that? Lucinda challenged. Lola pointed. There, she said. With them. The wall of server cabinets lowered ahead of them, as if even the cabinets had tired of acting as a maze or labyrinth. Josie stood on tiptoe. She held her breath as the walls sank below the level of her eyes. Another group of kids appeared on the other side of the walls. No, another group of whatnots. And every single one of them seemed to be wearing a black veil. Chapter 57. Max, overwhelmed, along with everyone else. Who are they? Max asked, suppressing a shiver. The ones in charge, Lola whispered. The decision makers. They Are all of the female presenting model 82958S, or no, the male model 82958S2? Max noticed that some of the androids ahead of them were actually wearing hoodies that hung down over their faces in the same way as veils. Most of the androids were also wearing black turtlenecks and black pants. A few wore black dresses instead. They're the Franks and the Mirandas, the Francises and the Randalls, the Franciscos and the Merrills, Lola muttered. These are the whatnots that Frances Miranda Gonzaga sends out into the world pretending to be her, the ones who answer her email, respond to her voicemail, the ones who run the Whatnot Corporation. All of the androids standing ahead of them were kids, possibly even just fifth graders, but somehow they all reminded Max of his parents. Because they're in control, Max thought. You can just look at them and know that they're used to telling other people what to do. I thought we already got rid of all the bullies, Josie complained a little too loudly. Those aren't bullies, Lola said. These are the bossy ones. Bullies don't care who they hurt to get their own way. Sometimes the pain is even the goal, but the bossy ones, they think they're doing the right thing for everyone. Congratulations, one of the veiled whatnots at the front said, stepping forward. You are the first set of children to ever get this far. Then we're done? Max said. You'll let us go? And Mom and Dad and Nurse Beverly, too? He was pretty sure bullies would have laughed heartlessly at those questions. The model 82958S just pursed their lips and shook their heads as if they were deeply disappointed. But they all did it together. 40 or 50 or 60 model 82958s were all deeply disappointed in Max at once. You're not done. This came from one of the whatnots wearing a hoodie that sagged so far down on his face that Max wondered how he could see anything. But you've reached the final question. Final sounded a little frightening. So ask it, Josie said. All of the Franks and Mirandas and Francescas and Randalls and Franciscos and Merrills stepped forward at once, and all of them said in complete unison, Why did Frances Miranda Gonzaga invent whatnots? Okay, that wasn't creepy at all, Max told himself. Ugh. Why did the security guards have to take away our phones? Ashley moaned. We could have just looked up our answer on the company website. The Whatnot Corporation does not have a company website. One of the female Whatnots, a Miranda, a Frances, sniffed. That's so common, so low class. Then we can just ask Lola, Max suggested. She knows things. But Lola was already shaking her head. Not this, she said, her eyes rolling side to side as if that helped her scan all the memory banks at once. She sounded surprised, as if it had never occurred to her that she didn't know this information. And I'm not just saying that to cover for not being allowed to tell you. She turned toward the nearest model 82958. Why don't I know that? You each get one chance to answer, one of the Franks or Randalls or Franciscos said. Are we allowed to talk together? Max asked. I mean, is this like a group project or a team effort where everyone contributes and silence? One of the model 82958 snapped at him. Your tedious questions are boring. Each one of you has formed your own opinions already. Just give your answer. Max clutched Josie's hand. He'd never even had a teacher yell at him like that. He felt like such a baby, but then he saw that Ashley, Lucinda, and Ivy were holding hands too, and Lola started patting Josie's arm. It's not babyish to be afraid of scary things, Max told himself. It's not babyish to only be afraid, to never even try to move past that, and to demand that everyone else around you take care of you all the time. Like, that's the most important thing, even if they're scared, too. He opened his mouth ready to give his answer, but surprisingly, Ivy stepped forward first. I know, she said. I bet it was because Frances Miranda Gonzaga could. She got an idea in her head, and she could see the whatnots she wanted to build so clearly in her mind's eye, and then she had to make them for real so she could see if it was really possible. She's saying it was the sheer joy of creation, Lola said, as if Ivy needed her to translate for the androids. All the Model 82958s began conferring in whispers. Maybe Ivy was right. Or maybe the Model 82958s aren't even sure, Max wondered. One of the androids in a hoodie stepped away from the group. I'm Randy. She or he or they said, I like your answer. If this were a school assignment, I'd say you deserved heaps of partial credit. But that wasn't that kind of a test. You have to be 100% right to win. You have to match the real human Francis Miranda Gonzaga's answer exactly. And you don't. So, a buzzer sounded. The same kind of buzzer that marked the end of basketball games. You thought you might be able to win, but now, with the buzzer sound, you knew you had absolutely positively lost. Max felt so sorry for Ivy. He waited for Josie to go next, because that was how things were in school. Josie was always sitting on the edge of her seat, always bursting with ideas, always eager to talk next. But right now she was biting her lip just as indecisively as Lola. You want real? Lucinda said. I bet it was just for the money. Ashley tugged on Lucinda's arm and whispered so loudly that Max was sure everyone could hear her clearly. Lucinda, the Whatnot Corporation is holding us a prisoner. Don't insult the company founder like that. This is one of those times when you have to play along. Lucinda pulled away from Ashley. I'm not saying it's a bad thing to want more money, Lucinda said. Me of all people, how could I say that? That's why I want to do well in school. I want to be able to grow up and get a good job and have money to help Mom and Dad and Ivy and Casper. There are so many good things I could do if I had money. Maybe Francis Miranda Gonzaga was just like me and Ivy and Josie in the beginning. Poor, always looking up, always seeing what other people had and could do, and knowing all those things were off limits for her and the family she loved. And then Frances Miranda Gonzaga got the idea for Whatnots, and she saw right away how it could make everything else possible. The Whatnots didn't even confer about this. One model 82958 stepped out immediately. Frankie here, she said. Your premise has merit. Poverty and hope have spurred many an innovation in human history, hence the expression about necessity being the feminine parental unit of invention. But Francis Miranda Gonzaga did not grow up poor. So the buzzer sounded again. Lucinda's shoulders sagged as if she really thought she was going to win. Then why did Frances Miranda Gonzaga grow up rich? Ashley asked. Maybe she was like me and had crazy overprotective parents who didn't trust anyone around their precious little girl. Who didn't even trust their precious little girl? And Frances Miranda Gonzaga cooked up the scheme right from the beginning to tell parents their kids were only going to be around safe, sterile, boringly predictable whatnots. So she had to make sure some real android whatnots as prototypes, but they were really only decoys right from the start. Maybe FMG thought it was best for all different types of kids to get together, to be in a classroom as equals, and the only way she could get rich parents like hers or mine to allow that was by setting up this elaborate scam. Provocative notion. Oh, the model 82958, Frankie answered Ashley right away, too. Provocative notion, she said, nodding sagely. All the other model 82958s nodded just as thoughtfully behind her. You hit on ideas that all of us androids have debated mightily. Who is Francis Miranda Gonzaga really trying to help? The rich kids or the poor ones? Our answers are all over the map. But your starting premise is flawed. Francis Miranda Gonzaga did not start out rich or poor. She grew up middle class. For her, money was not the spur or stumbling block, the blessing or curse. It is for all of you. The buzzer sounded again. Ashley shrugged. It's not like I need the money anyhow, she said, but Lucinda, if I'd won, I would have given it to you, you know. Lucinda gritted her teeth. I wouldn't want your charity, she muttered. Why are you assuming the prize is money? Lola interrupted the brewing fight. Isn't the prize in these types of contests always money? Ashley asked. What is the prize we're competing for, if it isn't money? I don't know, Lola said blankly, as if once again she was surprised to find an answer missing. This contest isn't fair, Max burst out, and now everyone looked at him. Why? Lucinda asked. Because it's not set up to make sure you win? No, because it is, Max said. Because Josie and me, we get to hear your answers first and know what not to say. And besides, my parents told me why there are whatnots, so I have an unfair advantage. Oh, Max, Lola said gently, don't you remember how many things your parents were wrong about because they didn't know any better? Oh, yeah. Max had forgotten. It was going to take him a while to adjust to not being able to believe and trust his parents, always being 100% right about everything. He wasn't used to seeing them as imperfect. Let's hear your answer, one of the Model 82958s growled. It might have even been the one who'd been at Max's house the night before. The answer you believe, the one that your parents told you. Max gulped. Well, Dad said they didn't want me growing up around people who only valued me for money, he said. And Mom said she didn't want me to be mean to anyone when I was a kid and just learning, and then to have to regret my behavior the rest of my life. She didn't want me to hurt anyone. So maybe Francis just wanted whatnots to help rich kids grow up to be nicer people. And then maybe they could be kinder to people who didn't have as much money? He couldn't quite bring himself to use the word poor. And do it in a way that doesn't make other kids upset and mad? He darted his gaze from Josie and Ivy to Ashley and Lucinda. They at least seemed to all be considering his answer carefully, their heads tilted to their side, their brows furrowed. But the growling Model 82958 muttered, "You took that further than your parents told you." Is that wrong?" Max squeaked. "No, that's a good thing," Growly answered. "But—" She cast a quick glance behind her, and all the other Model 82958s gave approving nods. "Your answer overall is wrong." The buzzer sounded again. Everyone turned to Josie. "This isn't fair!" Max wanted to shout those words again, but their meaning had flipped in his mind. It wasn't fair to Josie that everything came down to her. It wasn't fair that she'd had to stand there and watch everyone else fail before taking her turn. Each failure made it more likely that she would fail too. It wasn't fair that they'd taken all the good answers and there was nothing left for her to say. It wasn't fair that she'd had to pretend to be a whatnot and sleep in a charging station and almost never get to see her father. It wasn't fair that the Whatnot Corporation had them all trapped now, and they didn't even know what would happen if every single one of them failed. But most of all, it wasn't fair that Josie's face was so blank. Josie knew so many other answers. She remembered how fast cheetahs could run, and she knew how to solve for X and algebra problems, and she could tell you the name of every single country in Africa, and she always knew the right thing to say when Max was sad or upset. Even if, every now and then, she said the wrong thing first, she always got to the right thing eventually. So it was totally unfair that this was the question that everything depended on. And then, suddenly, Josie's face lit up. This was Max's favorite expression to see on Josie's face. It had always showed up right before words and ideas came tumbling out of her mouth, thick and fast and amazing. "I know the answer!" Josie crowed. "I know exactly why Francis Miranda Gonzagas invented whatnots."